Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another DC comic review. And in this week's DC we've got some Tynion Batman, followed by some Tamaki Detective Comics Batman. So, as you can see here, I will be reviewing issue 111 of the Tynion Batman and 1041 of the Detective Comics Batman. Time to jump into the first one. So, jumping into the first story, and of course the cover for the first story. Well, I guess you're wondering, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside the story? And surprisingly it does. And I really like what the artist has done here. Nice bit of detail. Plus you also see someone which is also connected to one of the characters that are actually in this story run. And that is to Mariko Molly. So, for this cover rating, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I just want to let the viewer know that I will not be covering the backstories that are happening in this. So time to jump into the internal art, to which I will give the rating for it after I've shown you some art around the beginning, middle and the end. So starting off with some art around the beginning. We can see the character Mariko Molly, which I think she's also with her little sister called Evie. And I find it quite interesting here as to what's happening in like some of these scenes. Here we've got the Peacekeepers already after Mariko Molly, as they're also looking out for Batman. Really nice art in this, I must admit. So I'm going to jump to the next part, some art around the middle of the story. And as you can see in this part of the middle of the story, we've got more Peacekeepers, but in this case they're going after Batman. Of course this is just pushing more into the Magistrate type of thing. If I wanted to point out something about this Magistrate story, it feels like it comes off more like a Tamaki story than a Tynion story. Now, if I happen to be wrong, I'm going to admit it. Now, the Fear State one does actually sound like it is a Tynion story when we start to reach that. And as you can see here, we've got Harley Quinn, Oracle, Peacekeeper 01, Mariko Molly trying to hide from him. Really nice art in this, and it's a surprise that it also seems to slightly carry over into the Detective Comics one. Okay, now some art towards the end of the story. As you can see here, we've got Batman back in the picture, one of the Peacekeepers, Simon Saint, and his part in the Magistrate program. And of course, last but not least, Scarecrow. Who almost looks like a manga type villain, to be honest. Almost. Not 100%, but almost like. For this, I gave the art a 7.5 out of 10. And I must admit, good job and choices with the panels, Tynion. Especially with your artists. And this is where I gave the art a 7.5 out of 10. Alright, now that they have been covered, it's now time to cover the story and its racing, and the things I also like to find in my stories. Were there any comic references? No, but it wouldn't hurt to sort of like maybe reference the past issue or the past couple of issues. Do we get time of day to which some of these events are happening? No, but it would actually help the story, to be honest. Moving into locations, one of the locations that we do get to see is actually Arkham Asylum. As for the rest of the place, I got no bloody idea where the hell we are. And that really needs to be fixed up in the story. Moving into the cast of characters, I must admit, this is one area where he does seem to exceed quite well in, but there are the rare occasions where he doesn't. Of course, Batman, Miracle Molly, Evie, which I feel is her sister. Then we've got Peacekeeper 1, Ghostmaker, who makes an appearance, Manakano, Simon Saint, Harley, and of course Scarecrow. To which I gave this story a overall rating of 6 out of 10. Okay, now moving into Detective Comics Batman by Mariko Tamaki. And starting off with the cover, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside the story? Not really, to which I gave the cover a big 5 out of 10. I think this is one of the lowest I have given Tamaki in regards to covers, just in this particular Detective Comics run. But let's see how she went in regards to working alongside with her artist, with the pictures and the panels for the racing. As I pointed out before, I will only be covering the first story in this and not the backstory. So let's have a look at the beginning, middle and end. And as we start off at the beginning, we've got Manakano, who's meeting up with some of his associates. And of course, as we look to the other side, we've got Bruce Wayne leaving one of his bat caves that are in the sewer. Or better yet, going into. Moving to some art around the middle. Jumping into the middle, to which we have Batman, who has been asked to bring Bruce Wayne to meet up with a group who are calling themselves the Jury, which is made up of villains. And of course we can see one of those villains is of course Cobblepot, the Penguin, and the other one is Mr. Worth. Very nice, very well done here. I did like how the art was used in it. So what about towards the end? As we start to move towards the end, we have the appearance of Huntress and some Oracle as well. And of course, something that seems to be happening with Batman. To which it must be Mariko Tamaki's way of emasculating the man. Well, overall for the art in this, I gave it a 7 out of 10. But let's see how she went in regards to the story rating. As we now jump into the story rating, there are of course things that I personally enjoy. Well, starting off with first things first, are there any comic references? And you bet there are. There was actually a comic reference in regards to Detective Comics 1038. In regards to time, we got hours earlier and now, which covers sort of like some of the events that happened sort of like early in the story to what moved into presently happening in the story. We got locations such as Gotham City Hall and Hugh Vile's cell, which was very interesting because he plays a part in regards to something that he can do because he's a villain. Moving into the cast, we had Nakano, we had Vile. We, of course, had Batman, Oracle, Mr. Worth, Penguin, and last but not least, Huntress. Now, you'd think that this would be enough to give the story a pretty fair rating. Even though in some part it does, I feel that this story is actually starting to lose its way. To which I gave the story a rating of 5 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.